Dr. John Whyte is the Chief Medical Officer of WebMD and is also a well-established author. He has written books that give practical advice on how to take control of your heart disease risk, diabetes risk, and specifically what we're here to talk about today, cancer risk. Cancer is something that unfortunately most of us are impacted by, myself included, yet our knowledge is relatively sparse. In episode number 53 of the Better with Brock podcast, you can expect to learn how to manage your own personal cancer risk through the food that you consume on a day-to-day basis, the physical activity that you participate in and what intensity it should be at, and the impact sleep and chronic stress has on the cells in your body. Dr. John Whyte, welcome to the podcast. How did everything start for you? What got you interested in writing this book on how to control your cancer risk?
Yeah, well, really what I've been struck by is that, we see cancer still a significant cause of death around the world, despite all these amazing advances that we seem to have. So I really wanted to help explain to people what they could do to reduce their risk. Because I'll tell you, Brock, a lot of people think it's all genetics, right? So if I don't know someone in my family that had cancer, I don't have to worry about it. And that's not true. But there's really a good amount of things that you can do on a daily basis that can reduce your risk.
Yeah, and that's what I really want to unpack. And I've heard you say on other interviews and podcasts that your genetics is around about, give or take, 20% of the risk, and the rest is in your hands and you can control to some, to varying degrees. But I think that story in itself is impactful because, I guess I'm very interested in this topic, and I mentioned this to you as well. I lost my mother to cancer when I was very young, and as I grow older and now as a father, it kind of puts things in the back of my mind. What's the chance of this? What's the chance of that? How long do I have left? Have I passed on anything to my daughter? There's all of these questions. So to actually know that majority of the work is coming down to me, that's very empowering. And I believe other people that have experiences where, I'm not sure, it may be an experience like mine where it's in the family or a friend or even their own journey. I actually just heard yesterday from a friend that I was working out with, a friend of ours that was a personal trainer. She's just recently, found out that she has cancer as well. And it just kind of pops out of nowhere, and it's very frightening. But to know that we can make a difference is really, really impactful. And, you've talked about previously before the importance of sleep, the importance of nutrition, the importance of exercise and lifestyle, and the importance of looking after your mental health. And I just want to kind of unpack each pillar as we kind of move through, beginning with nutrition, because we eat every single day. And I like to look at, from a fat loss, body composition, personal trainer perspective, what I say to my clients is every meal is an opportunity to move towards your goals or further away from your goals.
Yeah.
And sorry, you go.
No. So really what I try to get people to think about is food is medicine. It's really as powerful as a prescription drug. And when you start to think about it that way, it really helps you make that decision. Should I have a bag of potato chips or should I have an orange? And a lot of times people think, how can food cause cancer? Part of it is when we eat unhealthy, we gain weight. And we know the role of being overweight with your risk of cancer. It's a complicated process that really revolves around inflammation and immune response. And if you're not eating healthy, you're not going to get those important vitamins and minerals. If you're eating all the processed foods, the salamis, the pastrami's, all of these things that are filled, with nitrates and other aspects that make it tasty, are not inherently healthy. And when you think about how do they make all these processed foods, they're stripping away, all the healthy aspects. And it's never one daily choice that's going to increase your risk, But what I tell people is it's your choices that are made on a daily basis over time that impact your risk.
Yeah, a quote that I like that hints towards that idea is one hot day doesn't make a summer. A entire string of hot days makes a summer. And, that's the power of consistency working for you or consistency with bad habits working against you.
Right.
With the balance of, because there's no person in the world really that is just going to drop everything on the weekend, just going to continue to eat no sugar and, not overeat and just completely eliminate alcohol. There are some people like that, but for a lot of people, there still needs to be some moderation and some balance. How can people balance that with keeping their cancer prevention in mind?
Part of it includes doing an accurate assessment yourself. What I find is, people will always say to me, "Oh, Dr. Whyte, I eat healthy. I eat salads, or, I try to eat a healthy breakfast," but they're significantly overweight. And diet, what we eat, plays a big role. I often ask people to do a food journal just for a week. And I tell them to ignore the first 2 days because they're trying to behave that day, and don't want to put in bad things. And then I say, you have to write down everything that you put in your mouth. And then you find out there's a lot of snacks, there's a lot of treats. And I said to a patient the other day, I said, that doesn't mean that you can never have ice cream, but you just can't have it every day. And she's like, "Oh, I don't have it every day." And I said, "Well, how often do you have it?" She's like, "Probably every other day." Well, that's probably too much when you're overweight. Here in the United States, only about 25% of people eat fish 1 day a week. The rest don't eat fish at all. I mean, it's staggering the number of people that go to fast food restaurants every day. So that's the problem that we're having, Brock. There's not an accurate assessment of what you yourself are doing. And then there's this sense, I don't want to deny myself anything. That's too hard to do, that I can never have potato chips, or I can never have ice cream, or I can never have a piece of cake. That's not what we're saying. We're saying you can't have it most days of the week. I want you to have more healthy days than unhealthy days in terms of what you eat. But most people aren't like that.
Yeah, I think that fish consumption statistic is down to, when you bring up fast foods, there's not many restaurants, fast food restaurants, where you can get quick and convenient food because so many people are time poor these days, especially, when you throw kids into the mix, as I'm experiencing, it just kind of gets, everything's so compressed. But yeah, there's not many fish options. And even though that's only one pillar of nutrition, it's still something that can help contribute to better health. So with nutrition, eating a healthy diet is what a lot of people will say. Personal trainers will say it, physicians will say it, doctors will say it. Can you give some practical advice of kind of what that can look like? Because some people just say, "Oh yeah, I'm eating healthy," and then they're eating, granola bars and all this kind of stuff that we know that is probably better than eating a chocolate bar, but there could be other better options too. So how can we kind of guide them in the right direction?
And there's a lot of misinformation out there. They don't realize that, how they bind the granola together is a molasses or a sugar. So I do ask people to look at food labels. Not that they have to study labels, or you may know how many carbs you had yesterday. I couldn't tell you that. But what I can do and ask patients to do, when you're looking at different yogurts, when one yogurt has 20 grams of sugar because it's French vanilla flavoring, and one has 6, or one has 15 grams of protein and one has 2, you know what the better choice is by just comparing. And what I often tell people is it's as important what you include as well as what you exclude. So you have to look at both. So you have to say, I'm going to reduce my consumption of red meat. We know that the studies have consistently shown an association between red meat and cancer, particularly colon cancer. Again, doesn't mean you can never have red meat, but how do you reduce it to maybe once or twice a week? How do you replace one hamburger or hot dog or sandwich with, as we just talked about, fish? Load it with powerful antioxidants, which we know reduces cancer risk, as well as lower in calories. So automatically, you're going to lose weight. How do you have more fruits and vegetables? Here in the United States, most people do not eat fruit on a daily basis. So how can you figure out a way to consume it? At least one meal. With one meal, maybe it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It'd be better if you had it, two of them, but I'd settle for at least one. How do you have more, whole wheat and low fat dairy? Those are the things that you want to include on a daily basis. And then you want to exclude, the processed foods, the saturated fats. What I say to people, all those sugary drinks, right? We consume so many calories by what we drink and we don't even think about it. You should replace everything with basically water, and coffee is good. And we can come back to that as long as it's not
I'd like to touch on
the
that.
frappuccinos. But those are some of the changes that you want to make. And what I always say to patients, Brock, is I'm not as concerned as where you are next week or 3 weeks from now. I'm concerned where you are 2 years from now, 5 years from now. Because if you keep doing what you're doing, it's going to catch up to you over time. And there's so many choices out there. You have to find what you enjoy. And too often people will say to me, oh, Dr. Whyte, I don't like fish. Oh, Dr. Whyte, I don't like beans. I had a patient say to me, I don't like water. And I knew what she meant. She liked the flavor of it. But the point was, you have a young child now. When they get older, you're not going to say, oh, you can't, if they say they don't like it, you're going to tell them to keep trying it. You're going to find different ways to enjoy it. So there are ways to do that for yourself, just as you would for your children.
Yeah, personally, I put frozen kale and frozen spinach into smoothies because I know that I fall into a category of a person that doesn't really thoroughly love vegetables. I like roast potatoes, roast sweet potato, roast pumpkin, that kind of stuff. Most people can get on board with that, but to sit down and eat a bowl of broccoli or eat the broccoli on the side, I'm just kind of not a big fan of that. But then there are ways like putting them in a smoothie.
I love the frozen idea because then it doesn't go to waste.
Yeah. So, and that's why I also love smoothies. And okay, I may be sacrificing a bit of the fiber because I'm blending it all up, but at least I'm still getting a ton of things that I probably wouldn't really eat if I'm not having a smoothie. So I find that has been a big win for me. Would you say that with nutrition? So a lot of the things that you're talking about, my personal training brain and my nutrition brain is going, well, ultimately what we're doing here is looking for foods that are nutrient dense, probably less hyper palatable, still tasty, but not extremely tasty that your brain's like, I need more, which leads to overeating. So would you say that the nutrition advice would be, I guess, mainly reducing calories because that has an impact on their waistline, and then being at a healthier weight is better for cancer risk than just the foods alone?
We definitely have to be at a healthier weight. And we're going to talk about activity and exercise, but I'll tell you, most of our weight is dictated by what we eat. Exercise has enormous health benefits, but you're going to lose weight by changing what you eat. And we used to think a calorie is a calorie, whether it's from fat or it's from, carbohydrates, but that's not quite true because we know that some foods are healthier than others. So it is about calories in, but also combined with calories out. But again, it's that what you include as well as what you exclude. So you can't say, I'm going to eat kale, I'm going to eat broccoli, and then I'm going to have chocolate bars at night as a dessert, because they're going to zero each other out. What I really focus on with patients are finding those foods that they enjoy. As you said, those nutrient-dense foods, because that's going to make them feel full. That's going to release something called leptin and ghrelin, which is going to help you feel satisfied so you won't overeat. But you still have to have a plate that is full of nutrients, that is full of antioxidants, that's going to make you feel good and live longer. None of us really feel good after a high carbohydrate dinner or something with a lot of sugar. You have to have that balance, particularly as protein and fiber.
Yeah, fiber's a big one that I've been thinking about lately, and also kind of changing my mind in terms of what I recommend to clients. And I'm not a doctor by any means, but I do look at a lot of things to do with nutrition and how it has an impact on our life. And I used to be pretty bro, if you know what I mean. Like I was just like, macros are the only thing that counts, calories are the only thing that counts. Back in 2019, I did something called I called it the 30-day ice cream challenge, where I actually ate ice cream every day but still lost weight. And I didn't just eat ice cream. I had the rest of my diet, normal foods, the healthy smoothies and, rice. And,
I'm not sure where we're going here,
all this kind
Brock,
of
but
stuff.
go on.
Yeah. I know.
I'm teasing.
I guess what I'm saying is, so I just had dessert every night. I had ice cream every night and I lost weight. It was to prove a point that, moderation can, you can still have something here and there and still lose weight. But now looking back at it, I'm like, well, is that really the best advice to be giving? Because who can really stop at the amounts of ice cream that I was having and then stopping? And also, is this great advice to say, hey guys, you can have ice cream every day and lose weight? And even though it proves a point that calories and macros matter in terms of body composition and losing weight, what does it do for your long-term longevity and things like cancer risk and things like that? So I went from this perspective, like, only calories matter, but now and I think everyone.
It's the quality of the calories.
Yes,
it's the quality.
Yes, I think
and
everyone in the
you
fitness
exercise
spaces.
a lot. So I'd have to monitor what you were doing at that time with exercise. I mean, we have to remember, and I should say, cancer is primarily a disease of aging, but not completely, meaning most cancers occur when we get older. We're starting to see cancer at an earlier age, but it's really a issue of a problem with cell division, meaning your cells make a mistake when they divide. And instead of having a normal cell, you have a cancer cell. So the issue is what's causing it to make these errors in cell division. And there's lots of things that do that. But we also think the food that we eat that often results in being overweight impacts immune function, impacts cell division. And that's what's causing us to increase our risk for cancer.
So to jump into the physical activity aspect that you mentioned, there's calories in what we consume, but then there's the calories out in terms of what we expend. And that's not just I'm in the gym expending calories on the rowing machine, but it's also how much are we walking? What are we doing day to day? Are we working out? What type of workouts are we doing? What intensity are we working out? There's a lot of things to unpack, but what can we do with our training to help, I guess, our cancer prevention? Not that that's really, someone's like, I'm working out to prevent cancer, but, why not, if you're already training, have that in the back of your mind to kind of guide you where to go? So what can people, I guess, have in the back of their mind while they are putting time into exercise?
Yeah. We don't have a magic pill to prevent cancer. But Brock, if we did, exercise would be as close to that magic pill as we have. And there are so many reasons why. So I didn't mean to be flippant. Exercise does play a component of weight loss, but you're never going to, expend as many calories in exercise on a treadmill or something if you're eating a lot of high calorie, unhealthy foods. So part of it is helping to maintain normal weight. So that's important because that reduces inflammation, particularly chronic inflammation. It helps us maintain good blood sugar control, the issue of insulin release. And we think that insulin may ultimately play a role in cancer prevention as well. And, no one ever feels bad after they went to the gym. No one ever says, oh, I wish I didn't work out, or I wish I didn't go for a run. What do they feel? They feel great. King or queen of the hill. It's the release of these powerful endorphins. It's decreasing the amount of cortisol that we have, which we think also plays a role in chronic inflammation. And then we're also starting to see with exercise that it might actually impact what we call epigenetics, the way our cells divide, what we're talking about in terms of cancer. So it's really, as I said, as close to a magic pill as we have. But people have to do it right. And that's part of the issue. You have to have exertion. You have to have consistency. You mentioned walking. I like walking, but I'll tell you, if you just walk, an hour every other day, and it's this casual walk that you're talking to your spouse, which has value, or you're on your phone or something, but you're not putting exertion in, you're not going to reap those health benefits. So what I say to people, and you may agree or disagree, exercise smarter, not longer. Instead of walking for an hour, maybe you do power walking, or you walk at a certain pace for a minute, then you speed it up for a minute, then you go back down, and you have some element of that. That's what I want to see in terms of exercise, that you have some exertion and you do it consistently.
When I first thought of doing a podcast in 2019, I wrote down everything that I wanted to achieve with the show. And one thing I never wrote down was to spam you with ads of products that I never really used myself. However, I did write down that I wanted to grow it as big as possible and have as many interesting people on the show as I could. To help make that happen, all I ask is that you leave a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to this episode on and share it with someone that you know it will benefit. If you want to support myself even further, and more importantly, your body transformation, and are interested in having me as your coach to help you achieve the results that you just can't seem to achieve on your own, you can visit teamrockashby.com to see what program fits you best. Yeah. I definitely agree with working out smarter as opposed to just longer or even harder, because there's a lot of people that will just go to the gym and just thrash themselves in things that, yes, sure, they are exerting, but when we look at things like building muscle, okay, we could probably do it smarter. I think it really does depend on the individual too, because for someone that doesn't do anything, an hour-long walk every other day is actually a step forward. Yeah. But for someone who's looking to further their fitness, then we need to start looking at, like anything, how can we do it smarter? How can we get a better return on investment? And that exertion is very important. So even with training, in terms of trying to build muscle, we have to have a big enough stimulus for our muscles to say, hey, okay, we need to actually grow and we need to actually repair stronger to actually grow. So with longevity or cancer prevention, sorry, it's not the same thing, but is that the same thing? Does your body need to have that response to say, I need my cells to divide in a healthier way? I'm not really sure the science behind it.
What we think is happening here is it's the issue of inflammation. It's the issue of really helping to serve as an antioxidant. Right. We have these free radicals that our cells put out without getting overly complicated, and antioxidants help scoop them up. So to prevent, stroke, prevent a heart attack, prevent cancer. Exercise is very good in doing that. But the challenge is so many people don't know how to exercise properly. They go to the gym, they just look around, they see what someone else is doing. The guys are all huddled around the bench press and the bicep curls. And what I have to say is what I really have enjoyed about your posts, and one of the reasons why I was very excited to talk to you, is you're really a leader in helping people understand an exercise you're doing right versus an exercise you're doing wrong. Because as you pointed out, we're all limited by time. So if we're in the gym, or even if we're downstairs or in the garage and we set up gym equipment, we want to do it right. We don't want to hurt ourselves, but we want to get the benefit. And I love your videos because they're always great in showing you this is how you need to do it right. So that's an important component as well. People think they're exercising, and you probably have seen this too, and people are talking a lot to their friends. And then they're like, whew, I was here 50 minutes, but much of it was talking. And then they're wondering, wait, why aren't I having improvement? This isn't working. So that's a challenge.
Yeah, I have so much to say on that topic. So I did a podcast a few weeks ago, and I had Dr. Mike Israetel on. Actually, he's based in the States. And he was talking about this idea that he kind of coined, which is the stimulus to fatigue ratio. And that comes down to it's not a mind boggling idea, but ultimately it's trying to get the most out of the least and trying to get the most stimulus for what you're going for and the least amount of fatigue. And that's why I'm so on top of technique, because I want people to get the most for the least, which is what you're talking about, maximizing the time that we have. And that idea helps you to, in terms of training better, then you're hitting the target muscle better,
Right.
and then you're getting a better response for the amount of time, and you're also accumulating less fatigue, which makes you recover better, which also can help you perform better cognitively at your work, or as a husband or as a wife.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of why I'm on top of that, and I create these videos, because I want people to get the most out of it. Because as I've actually become busier as a person, when I was a young single personal trainer doing whatever I want, time was just, falling out of my pockets. And now I feel like I don't even have pockets to find the time. I really have to make the most and squeeze the juice out of every single day. I want to kind of talk about maybe just one or two myths that are prevalent in the cancer world that I'd want you just to unpack. And one main one for you is genetics. That's one of the biggest thing that I've picked up from you. Is there any others that you want to talk about, or do you want to expand on the genetics one?
Yeah, a couple. So there is this myth that most cancer is genetics. Only about, as you pointed out, 15 to 20% is genetics. And what it is are these inherited mutations. And we can't test for all these inherited mutations. And there are some kits that are available online, 23andMe, Ancestry, and they only check for a very limited number of these inherited mutations. And that's useful information to have. But if you test negative, that doesn't mean that you're still not at increased for some of these other variants. The best way to test for genetic history is to ask family members and to find out if someone died of cancer, what age they were, and what type. And if you see it in 2 or more people, then you may need to talk to a genetic counselor. And I also want to say you can do everything right that we've talked about, and you can still get cancer. That can still happen just by, unfortunate luck. The other issue is people used to think more so in the past that cancer was contagious, right? So you had to avoid people if they had cancer. But I point that out because there are some cancers, and I talk about it in the book, Take Control of Your Cancer Risk, that are viruses. The HPV virus, which can be involved in several types of cancers, head and neck cancer, cervical cancer, is a sexually transmitted virus, and we need to vaccinate against HPV. It's also for Hep B and Hep C. If you have either of those can increase your risk of cancer. Every now and then something will pop up on our feeds about microwaves and cell phones causing cancer. So, people can get obsessed about that, where we don't have any data to show that that is the case, and they're not focused on the things that we're talking about today, where we do have much better association. Another myth that might be of interest to your audience is the belief that only women get breast cancer. Men can get breast cancer as well. And if they do feel something suspicious, they are going to have to be examined. And the other myth that I'd point out, and this occurs with a lot of cancers, people assume they'll have symptoms, right? So they'll know when to go, kind of like with a heart attack. I'll have chest pain, so then I'll know to go. Often when you have symptoms such as weight loss that's unexplained, your cancer often has advanced. So that's why screening is important as well.
So what's the recommendations on screening? Is there any general guidelines? I know that there's many
it
different
varies.
types of cancer,
It varies by specialty group in the U.S., and it varies a little bit around the world based on resources. But it really bases on people at average risk. So if you have a family member who died of cancer or diagnosed with cancer at an early age, then you need to be screened earlier. But for colon cancer, it's typically the different groups say either 45 or 50. For mammograms, it could be 40 or it could be 35, depending upon what group you're listening to. And then for prostate cancer, it's typically around 45 years of age. Now, for pancreatic cancer and some other cancers, we don't have screening for those cancers. Lung cancer is primarily based on your smoking history and the amount of time that you smoked. And really, people need to get screened for these cancers if they meet those criteria.
Yeah, it's just often, I feel like it's not really a focus or a scare when you're in your 30s and kind of just like living life and you feel a bit invincible. I guess 30s is starting to feel a little bit like you're becoming less invincible, but I feel and this is just my anecdotal experience, but when people start to do the screening and all that kind of stuff, I'm not going to say that it's too late, but often it's when their health is already at a place
Right.
where they have reached the place where they need to do those screens because they're in a little bit of a,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I think it's, I've put on too much weight, or I haven't been training, and like,
Exactly.
man, I'm stuck. How can we encourage people to think a bit forward and, get behind the idea of prevention is the best intervention?
Yeah. And for most cancers, we don't screen in the 30s because, as I talked about, most cancer is of aging. But remember, the other thing I want to point out is skin cancer. Skin cancer still is significant cancer, and some are malignant that can result in significant morbidity, including, scars and deformations. So that's something to think about as well. Brock, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. How do we get people to change their mindset? We're kind of set up in healthcare as it's a sick care system, not a well care system. So we don't really focus on prevention. We don't incentivize doctors to talk about prevention. We don't pay for services that are associated with prevention. So it's really this mindset that we have to change with people that, sure, in your 30s, you're not thinking about, oh, like I want to still be living in my 70s and the 80s, but you also want to be living a quality life. You don't want to be associated with, morbidity and mortality and not being able to move. What I've been talking to people about lately in terms of exercise is I say, do you want to do cardiac rehab, which, as you may know, is primarily, diet and exercise after you have a heart attack? Or would you rather do it now? When you have more flexibility, more options, and you can prevent that heart attack to a large degree. But people tend not to think that way. I mean, you're very focused on health and wellness and know the benefit of it. And that's what we need to change people's mindset to. It's about wellness. How do you feel good? How do you, live longer, with a quality life? And it can be hard to do with the mixed messaging from media in terms of eating and drinking alcohol, and we just don't focus on it enough. And that's why I'm so glad you're having these conversations about the role of prevention, the role of wellness, the role of feeling good with healthy foods and exercise.
Yeah, I think as unfortunate and difficult it was to lose my mum at a young age to cancer, I also try to see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the fact that I do see, I've had this perspective of looking at 90-year-old Brock, looking back and, trying to see what his life would look like. Because once you experience this, and I think a lot of people that have lost someone significant in their life will have this idea. Once you see the loss of life, you really understand the true value of life and the gift and the miracle and just the basic win you have every day just waking up, because some people do not have that privilege. And to look back from a future 90-year-old Brock that I don't even know. I don't even know if I'll make it to 90, but I pretend that I do, and I look back.
Good. Hope you do.
Yeah, so do I. But looking back from that, I think that's just such a powerful concept in all facets of life, but especially our health. So we need to think, okay, does 90-year-old Brock still walk? Yes, okay. So what does 80-year-old, 70-year-old, 60, 50, 40, 30-year-old Brock do to help make sure that that's a goal? And now, I can have goals of trying to squat this amount and, having legs X big. Not that that's really a goal of mine, but as you get older, these goals will mature. And I think as long as you have that kind of end destination where you reverse engineer your goal from, I think that's a really important thing for people to consider. And that's really hard to sell to a 20-year-old, I know, because they don't have that perspective. But I think that unfortunate circumstance that I had really helped me to see that. Along the lines of lifestyle, because that's kind of a separate thing to just training and food. Like lifestyle could be stress, it could be relationships, it could be, I don't know, career choice or fulfillment. How does that impact cancer prevention or our health in that way? Because, or even mental health as well. like what are the impacts? Because it feels so broad to me, and to be very honest, I'm not really sure what the correlations are between things like stress and mental health with cancer.
Yeah, you know what, Brock, I think it's important for listeners to know there's no physical health without mental health. There really isn't. And there's no mental health without physical health. They're on a continuum, although in medicine we tend to put them in separate areas. I mean, we even have separate disciplines, but they really are integral. And, you know, we've known it for centuries, the mind brain connection, but we don't, or the mind body connection, but we don't do anything about it. And I bring up the example of when you're not feeling well, if you think you have flu, you know, what's the first thing that you do? You go to bed. You instinctively know the power of sleep to restore immune function. Now, everyone has stress in their lives. And, you know, some stress is important. You know, when you're in a dangerous situation or you need to get something done, some stress is good. It's the chronic stress, the stress on a daily basis that I see in patients that are impacting their activities of daily living, that are impacting, you know, irritable bowel syndrome. People are coming in with nausea, diarrhea. They're having chest pain at a young age. Stress is that chronic inflammation, which is not good. It's causing an error in cell division. An example I say that stress on our cells is, if I told you, oh, hey, you only need to make, you know, 10 cookies for your child's school event tomorrow, right? But then I say, oh, wait, Brock, I was wrong. It's 100 and I need them tomorrow. What would happen? Some wouldn't look so good. Some wouldn't taste so good. You would make some mistakes as you had to get all of them done. And that's what's happening with your cells in cell division. Under a lot of stress, you're making mistakes, and some cells are going to become cancerous. That's the real issue with stress and cancer. And we have seen this time and time again through studies.
And you touched on sleep as well. How does that impact it? So obviously, I think that sleep has been growing in awareness, how people have
Absolutely,
you know, been more aware of actually the benefits of it, recovery, especially from a sports perspective. But also, like, I must be very honest, I'm not the best with sleep, and I have a big list of things to do per day. And as a young parent, I'm still trying to balance and someone that works for himself, you know, to be very honest, I'm still very much balancing time management and within time management comes sleep management, because that does take up a portion of time. And I used to have an unhealthy relationship when I was younger and look at it as a waste of time. And I've definitely changed my perspective on that. It's not a waste of time. It's actually a good use of time. What role does it play in terms of our cancer risk?
And, you know, we have these sleep trackers now. I don't know if you have one on, either a ring or a watch. I see you showing your watch. I have a Fitbit on as well. And I do track my sleep. I don't get preoccupied by it. And, you know, I have a whole chapter in the book about sleep. And, you know, Brock, I have to say, I still don't think you have the right perspective on sleep, because, you know, it is kind of that bravado that's often in medicine, and you're talking about in your own life. Oh, I don't need sleep. I'll sleep enough when I'm dead. Or, you know, sleep is only, you know, for those people that are weak. I'm fine on 4 hours sleep. Guess what? You're not fine on 4 hours of sleep. It might work 1 or 2 times, but you do that on a continuous basis, it is going to add up in terms of the health benefits. And the reason why is that sleep really is the work of multiple hormones that are important in our body. The main ones are cortisol and melatonin. There's also orexin and some others. So, you know, cortisol is what helps us wake up in the morning, and then later at night it goes down, whereas melatonin is really impacted by light, and it signals to our brain when it's getting dark that it's time to go to sleep. When you mess up that rhythm, that circadian rhythm that we refer to, that is going to cause problems later on. And we actually have seen, and I talk about it in the book, in shift workers, people that work these unusual hours late at night, an increase in certain type of hormonal cancers, particularly prostate and breast cancer. And some countries of the world have actually compensated shift workers who have gotten cancer because we think it's relating to this, messing up of these hormones. And what is frustrating, and I get it, you have a lot to do, and sleep is always the lowest priority. And you think, I'll get to it later in life. And I used to say, what's the one thing that you can start doing today to reduce your cancer risk? It's actually getting more quality sleep. But that's something, Brock, that will catch up to you over time. And it is hard, and it's really hard with a newborn. And, that might be the case for several months, but it's about time management. It's about realizing, what's important. People do need sleep. And you instinctively know it's important to have recovery from heavy lifting days. Why is that? Why is that necessary for your body to physically recover? Why don't you think it's, I'm being, rhetorical. Why don't you think it's necessary for your brain to recover? It's not, sleep is not putting your computer in sleep mode. It's really about cleaning out your brain, getting rid of these free radicals. There's a lot going on while you sleep. So sleep does play an important role.
Yeah, when I was younger, I did this interview and I actually said those words, "You sleep when you're dead," and I just looked back.
See?
And it was just really, it was really dumb. I've definitely changed my mind, and
Good.
I've actually been doing my best to try and improve it. So I've been trying to like tape my mouth because I often it sounds weird, but often because I'm a very active sleeper. Okay. And I think it's because I'll like lie on my back and I'll probably snore or something like that. Like my wife will say that I was snoring and all this kind of stuff. So we looked after things like the darkness, the temperature, and having the bed only to sleep. And
Cooler is better.
Yeah,
cooler is better. Around 65, 67.
Yeah, I think that's around
Fahrenheit.
Yeah,
Celsius.
Around 18 to 20 degrees Celsius is kind of where that range lies. But
I don't know about the taping of the mouth.
So I have been doing that, and it makes a big difference because you're nose breathing.
Okay.
So apparently that helps with the oxygen intake, and often when we wake up, or like I think I wake up frequently throughout the night, but I don't remember it because I'm like so tired and I'm just like kind of go back to sleep, but it's not restful. Anyway, I find that I have much more vivid dreams, or I even dream because I find I don't dream. I don't dream when I don't do it, and but yeah. Anyway, that's just kind of like some.
You're gonna have to send me your sleep tracking data, and we'll have to.
Oh, it's not good.
We'll have to have a telemedicine visit.
It's not good. We're still trying to figure that out. But I'm aware that you have to jump off. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. As I said, this is a topic that's very close to my heart, and I wish I heard a conversation like this. When I was younger. I guess not really so for myself, but more so just to help me kind of come to terms with things because there were so many unanswered questions. There wasn't much knowledge around this type of content because, I don't know, maybe it was a bit less attractive, but now it's so, I guess it's so prevalent in life that we have to be aware of it. And, whether we like it or not, whether we choose to address the concern or not, unfortunately, cancer is going to happen. So it's best to be aware of it and be as preventative as possible. Like I was saying, prevention is the best intervention. And
That's
I really
right.
want to get that mindset out there, and having this conversation really helps that.
We always say at WebMD that better information leads to better health. So it is about empowering people with information so that they can, be more engaged with their own care. So thank you for having me, Brock. I look forward to future discussions.
Thank you so much for coming on, mate. I appreciate your time.